All right, thanks, Rob. Call the meeting to order for the Logan Township Board of Education. Adequate notice having been provided by the posting of notices with the Township Clerk, South Jersey Times, and all board members having been notified. A regular meeting is being held virtually due to COVID-19, and the directions for this meeting is on the Logan Township School website. As governed by the Board Policy 167, it states that the presiding officer may waive the rules when necessary to maintain an orderly operation of the board meeting. And since this is a remote board meeting, the board president has decided to have only one public participation to pose any questions that whether they're listed on the agenda or not. And finally, there's a new remote meeting regulation that says a local public body shall provide the public with notices with similar access to remote public meeting as members of the local public body, staff of the local public body, and any individual seeking one or more approvals from the local public body. If a remote public meeting is held by audio and visual, the public shall have the opportunity to participate in the meeting, both audio and visual capacities. A local public body meeting held in person shall not prohibit members of the public body from attending in person. That basically means that we can't have a hybrid meeting where the board can meet in person and the public can only come in on a Zoom type situation. Having said that, roll call.
Mr. Donnelly.
Here.
Mrs. Kegler.
Here.
Dr. Bowen.
Here.
Mrs. Hill.
Here.
Mrs. Lombardo.
Here.
Mrs. Mason.
Here.
Mrs. Reed.
Here.
Mrs. Roan.
Here.
Mr. Russell.
Here.
It's everybody.
Okay. All right, Pat, we turn it over to you for any presentations, correspondence, or administrator's report.
Pat, are you on mute?
I sure am. So we will thank you. Thanks for pointing that out, Sarah. So I'm going to start with correspondence and ask Sarah to pull up the email that I received from a parent on Sunday that was unsolicited, but it really did make my midday Sunday. And I thought we would share it with the community and the board members. Sarah, do you want to read it?
Sure. Just wanted to let you know, while on baseball fields this week, my husband overheard parents talking about what an amazing job Logan is doing right now, how they are happy with the live instruction, and how many of their friends in neighboring towns are not, how we have a plan in place for hybrid and started out remote to ensure the safety of the kids, and how the hybrid plan will still include live instruction on remote days. He came home and told me they were raving. So for every negative comment you get, there really are more positive people than not. Just thought I would share because that put a smile on my face. Enjoy your Sunday.
So thank you, Sarah, for reading that. Can you move back to the agenda, because then we go into the administrator's report. We usually go over the drills, and we didn't have any drills in the month of September because we were all remote in the month of September. The school enrollment is listed here. They keep on going down, and we obviously had no suspensions because we were not in person. But before we move to anything else, I'd like to add to my administrator's report a comment about what I've seen and observed going on in our district over the past 2 weeks since we brought back our special needs, some of our special needs classes. Back over at LEMS last week, as well as bringing back our pre-K students. We had about 80 students returning to the district last week, and this week we were joined by the kindergarten students. I've been over there every single day. First of all, I commend Mrs. Green, Mrs. Flynn, Dr. Jansen, and the entire staff, all the teachers and the aides. They have all pitched in, working so hard to protect our children as they enter in, provide a safe environment, a happy environment. Children are walking in every day wearing their masks. Our little 3 and 4-year-olds are wearing their masks unbelievably, able to handle that for 2.5 hours. You can tell there are smiles on their face, even though you can't see the smiles, through their eyes and their gestures. That started last week. It continues this week. It was very interesting watching our kindergarten children almost following our pre-K children, because we had that extra week with our pre-K. So the pre-K students knew where to go, and the kindergarten students were entering into a new classroom. So they were kind of following the younger students. I also thought it was interesting that because we had such a strong remote program, and I'm not saying it is a perfect program, but it is a stronger than most districts remote program, our kindergarten students had developed a relationship with their teachers for up to a month, if not 6 weeks, before they entered into the school. And I've watched this for many, many years now as kindergarten children and pre-K children come in. And I've never seen a more confident group of kindergarten children coming into a classroom and recognizing their teacher in person. And even though they're only going to be with that teacher for 2.5 hours, just thrilled to see that person in person, that teacher in person, and the reaction that they're feeling. So there's a comfort level there. I know it is hard, very, very hard on parents right now. It is because of the structure and the way we have to make schedules based on the staff that we have, based on the number of staff we have, based on the cuts that we've had, based on the fact that we share a lot of staff, based on the fact that we are a small district with a stretched staffing, in not only in teaching, but nursing and custodial and all that. But we saw the rewards of all the work that we've been planning ever since September, last week when the children came in. And I wish I could, I was trying to paint the best picture I could, but it is a joyous place, Center Square is right now. And then last Friday, I had the privilege of watching our kindergarten teachers practice handling remote lessons, teaching live sessions, but doing it to a group of children that were still remote at home, and balancing teaching in their classroom, back in their classroom, while still communicating and having that relationship with the students that they had at home. And I also watched, and this is really important for the board members and the community members to know, that we had Dr. Jansen and Jake Neary, our tech coach, out in the hallway brainstorming, watching, trying to figure out how they could enhance and support the teachers more, and using the technology we have and the devices we have to make sure that we are trying to give our children the best instruction and under these circumstances. I also was grateful, and I said to Dr. Jansen that we have a strong curriculum, that we've developed a strong curriculum over the years, because as I moved from each classroom, I did not enter the classroom, I did it from the hallway, so we did not go over our numbers of socially distanced acceptable numbers that we are still mandated to have. I had tears in my eyes, and I'm not being over dramatic, of the quality of instruction and the quality that the teachers, the work level that they are producing. They are putting every effort they can to making the best situation of this, and a situation that is not through any fault of our own, and that we are trying to have the best instruction that we can for all ages in a district that is relatively small. And then my final statement is, I've been reading some of the questions, and I just want to address that. We are focused right now on bringing our grades 1 to 8 back by November 16th in a hybrid model that is a strong model for instruction, but we presently are not able to even start planning for a 5-day-a-week, fully in-person instructional model, because we are, in the state of New Jersey, we are mandated to follow the Restart and Recovery Plan that was developed back in June by the then commissioner, as well as approved by the governor, and that is to keep the socially distanced guidelines that are detailed in that plan. So at this point, we cannot increase our classrooms to have all the children come back in the same classroom. So when the governor and the new commissioner that we just found out we have now, the new commissioner of education, gives us that heads up that we can start decreasing increasing the numbers of safely increasing the numbers in each of the rooms and each of our classrooms, and maybe not being as socially distanced as right now we are obliged to. And then we will start following those guidelines as we did before, and start planning for that. Our goal is to provide the best instruction that we can and to keep COVID cases down. We don't want to mix cohorts. We believe that if we keep cohorts within cohorts, it'll be easier for contact tracing if a COVID case does break out, happen. And that's why we are committed to this model. We are not standing before anybody saying it is a perfect model, but I just wanted to give some explanation and probably share a little bit of my passion with the situation we're in right now. So I thank you for listening, and that was my administrator's report.
Okay, thanks, Pat. Any board discussion on any items you want to talk about? Okay, hearing none, we'll open up the meeting to the public to ask any questions on any item you want to talk about, whether it's listed on the agenda or not.
And before Sarah starts reading the questions, I will say to you that I asked Dr. Jansen to attend tonight's meeting because as supervisor of curriculum instruction, she has a very detailed, a lot of details that she probably could support me in answering some of these questions. And I also asked Mrs. Flynn to stay on, even though that wasn't her original plans, because I know there are some questions about special ed. So Sarah, do you want to ask the first question?
Yes. This is from Cindy Simmons from Logan Township. She does not share her home address. Please explain why students who elect the hybrid model will be teacher facing only one of the half days they are in the building. The other day they are to sit in front of a smart board in a different classroom. How is this different than them learning remotely at home?
Christy, you know I'm going to punt to you.
Yeah, sure, of course. You can hear me, correct?
Yes.
Sometimes, okay. Yeah, so you're correct with the question that our model does require that one day while the students are in person, the classroom teacher will be live streaming to a group of students across the hallway via the smartboard. While it may sound similar to the all remote day, the difference is that the teacher will be conducting a small 15 to 20 minute mini lesson. During that mini lesson, the group of students who are across the room will be monitored by a partner staff member in the room. So a special area teacher, one of our interventionists, or one of our trained classroom aides. Then after that 15 to 20 minute mini lesson, all students will be working on an assignment related to that mini lesson independently. So that teacher will be working with children independently to provide immediate feedback with them, hopping back and forth among those classrooms. So, you know, while the child might not have an interaction with the teacher during that mini lesson and only see the teacher on the smartboard, the child will see the teacher with some individual immediate feedback based on their how they're performing on the independent activity each day that they're in the classroom. So if it was only a one-day model where they came in on the day that their teacher was actually in that classroom setting, they would miss out on that immediate feedback that that classroom teacher would be providing with the other group of students as well. I think that answered the question.
Thank you, Christy. So for question number 2, Sarah, I believe I addressed that. It was what plans are being made to bring students back to school 5 days per week, and when can we anticipate this will happen? I read that ahead of time, so I wanted to address that we are bound by the restart and restart and recovery plan mandated by the state of New Jersey. We move to question number 3. I'm going to ask you to read that, and Laura, I believe this is a special ed question, so I'm going to punt it to you. But Sarah, would you read it first?
Yeah, this is from Denise Kane at 220 Abbey Lane. Her question has 3 parts. What is the district's plan moving forward to ensure special education students' IEP goals are being met? You may read all 3. You want to address one at a time?
I would read all 3.
What is the next phase of bringing special education students back in the building if that is the parents' wish, particularly considering the legislation currently in the state legislature? Are there plans in the works for any type of fee-based on-campus childcare, especially for students with special needs who have been rejected by the private preschools in town?
So regarding that first question, the district's plan moving forward to ensure special education students' IEP's goals are being met, that's currently occurring. We wrote the IEPs in the spring. We wrote them, of course, for normal or typical operation, but the teachers, the aides, are working with the students on their IEP goals currently, either remotely or in person, and will continue to do that. The next phase of bringing special education students back in the building, we have students that are currently in special education that are receiving in-person instruction, and then we have our next phase of our students that are in the in-class support classrooms that will be attending, if they choose, in November, on November 16th. And then Pat, I'm not sure about, I don't believe, I think we did consider a fee-based on-campus childcare program, and that was, at the time, we decided not to include that in our programming, but I don't know.
I can address that, Laura. Right.
Yeah.
I would assume then possibly that Denise is referencing the Just Kids type of program. And again, with the utmost focus on making sure that we keep students in the cohorts that they are in within the classroom, and not having and decreasing the chance of spreading the COVID virus by mixing cohorts. If we had an outdoor childcare in our building, they have different standards than school district standards, and we would not have any control over that. And my number one concern is our students and education during the day and keeping COVID cases. My original one was keeping COVID cases completely out of the district. As COVID cases are on the rise, my reality now is trying to keep them to a minimum. So that is why we are not having it out of a tuition-based at daycare until we have better handle on the pandemic. Okay, we can move to question number 4, I believe. Sarah, do you want to read that question?
Right, from Ms. Simmons again. That one, Pat?
Yeah, I think it is a repeat, but why don't you read it so that everybody...
Cindy Simmons, Logan Township. In Mrs. Haney's reply today to my email questions from 10/13, she states there are no immediate plans for returning all students to in-person instruction at this time. Please explain why our school district is not at least developing a plan to return students to 5 days of in-person instruction after 8 months of COVID, when other schools are demonstrating success with this model. How will we expect our students to be competitive with other students?
So I think I addressed that in my opening remarks, and I would say that the only additional thing I would say, and as I'm addressing this, moving on to question number 5, Sarah, would you pull up the COVID data, the next question it asks about, so we can have that. But my response is that I meet weekly with the superintendents from the Gloucester County. We have a conference call, a Google Meet conference, a Zoom meet every week, and we talk about where the trends are leaning. But we are mandated right now in the state of New Jersey to keep those social distancing guidelines and maintain them, and that is what we are adhering to. I have every hope that we will, I know that as soon as we are allowed to start planning, we will start planning for full in-person instruction as soon as we are allowed, depending on the numbers. That moves to question number 5. Are you able to pull up that slideshow?
Yeah, it wasn't formatting correctly, but I have it downloaded. I just need, like I can do it this way, I think.
There we go. That's fine.
Will that work?
Perfect. Yeah. So question number 5, Sarah, I'll read it. Can you read it, or do you want me to read it?
Yeah, I can read it.
Go ahead.
Mrs. Haney this is also from Cindy Simmons in Logan Township. Mrs. Haney indicated that she tabulates the individual cases in Gloucester County by town and by age. My question is, what are the number of COVID cases in Logan Township compared with neighboring towns in Gloucester County? What is the criterion number of cases Logan Township needs to be at for our administrators and board to feel we can safely and fully return our students to the classroom?
So again, that second part of the question is based on the social distancing guidelines we have to adhere to, so from the state. So there are no numbers, there are no cutoffs, but I just wanted to share with not only Mrs. Simmons, but the entire community that's online tonight, as well as the board. And the board has seen these. We produced these for 2 weeks. Please know this is not the data, this is not the way the data comes to us. Actually, Mrs. Toff, my administrative assistant, tabulates each case in Gloucester County, and she separates them by town and by age, and then we put them into a bar graph there for easy reference. So you can see here, this was from the past 2 weeks up to October 8th, and right now Mrs. Toff is tabulating the cases from October 9th through tomorrow, and then we share that with the board. So you can see obviously the cases from these 2 weeks were the 19 to 22 case, or the 18 to 22-year-old age group is the highest. We know if you go to the next slide, can you do that, Sarah? That if you look by town, it is Glassboro, and we believe that is completely associated with Rowan University. But if you also look at Logan, you can see where Logan is right now. So we see that as we want to keep that going. We know that schools were not open, so we believe that one of the maybe possible reasons is because kids have been socially distant and not in the school. So we're hoping that these numbers still stay for Logan as low as they are, even now that we're opened to pre-KK and some special ed classes. If you slide to the next slide, you will see the towns, the COVID. We also then compare Logan to the surrounding towns. So we're just not looking at the entire Gloucester County, but we're looking at the surrounding towns. And you can see that for that 2 week period, we had 5 cases in Logan. And then go to the next slide. Then we look at, I believe, the, can you go to the next slide, Sarah? I believe it's by ages. And even though each one of these age groups is basically one person, so that's where our age group was. And again, I look at it that our students weren't in school, so we kept the COVID cases down during this time frame, and they were just adults. And I don't mean just adults, but they were adults. They were not children who contracted COVID in that 2 week time frame. And then if you go to the next page, obviously, I am very concerned about the 0 to 4 and the 5 to 9 age group. So if you slide to the next slide, you can see that the towns that had one student, they're listed in the age group of 0 to 4. So I just give that information to Mrs. Simone, as well as anybody else who just wanted to see the type of data that we collect. But there are no set numbers to say, if we keep to five COVID cases in a 2 week period, we can then open. That's not how the state of New Jersey operates. Okay, do you want to go to the next question? Question number 6.
This is from Kim Thorpe, Stone Mill Way. Has consideration been given to families who have children on different hybrid schedules? Will my second grader be marked late if she cannot log in on time because I will be dropping my middle school students off at school?
And Christy and Laura, please add to this if you'd like to, but I could most probably answer this. We are very, very accommodating, and the reason we are taking latenesses in attendance is because we want to make sure that children are attending if they have any ability to attend. But if there is a situation at home like you described, obviously all you need to do is touch base with this principal, and we will make accommodations. So I know that we accommodate our parents. Question number 7. Is you want to read it, Sarah?
Yes, this is for, I'm going to completely botch this last name, so I apologize. This is from Laurie Kutzriba at 53 Stone Mill Way. Is there any plan to increase duration in school if the COVID numbers in Logan remain low?
I think I've already addressed that we are mandated to follow what the state of New Jersey guides us on. Question number 8.
Same resident asks, what is the status of the Chromebook situation?
Rob, are you able to address that since you're on this meet? I know the answer, but do you want to address that?
So we have been in contact with our supplier. Their best guess is late October, early November, with the caveat that, the whole country's backed up right now trying to get Chromebooks. So that's their best guess. We did get our order in early. I have seen other districts start to receive their things, but they're not full orders. So hopefully late October, early November, best guess at this point.
Okay.
If I can jump in for a minute, there was an article in Sunday's paper saying that across the country, there's a 5 million backlog on Chromebooks.
Yeah. And they're going by who got their order in first. We were fortunate to get our order in very quickly. And we've been on the waiting list for this long. So hopefully relatively shortly.
Okay.
I do just want to add to Pat,
Yes.
if there's a situation, a family situation that evolves where, you might have a device that you were using that's no longer working and you need to reach out to the school, we will make accommodations. So reach out to us if you are, in need of something. We'll try to support you.
Next question, Sarah. Thank you, Christy.
Same parent. For students in the hybrid plan, is there the ability to pivot to at-home instruction if they have cold symptoms and then return to in-person instruction?
Christy, do you want to answer?
Yeah. So, we haven't really set guidelines on that. I can say that we certainly don't want that to happen a ton. If a child has a doctor's appointment and can't come into school, that would be an absence, and that's okay. That happens. That happens all the time. If your child is sick and you wouldn't send them to school, you might not want to send them to virtual school either. That it's all dependent upon your situation, and reach out to us. We will work with you on situations like that. But we do really, if they're in the hybrid and the in-person, we want to make sure that we're not going back and forth too often, but we realize that cases can arise where we need to do something like that.
Thank you, Christy. So I'll just elaborate a little bit more on that. That if a child, I am appreciative of this parent, and I'm not going to pronounce your name either, but I'm appreciative of the question about if you have a cold symptom, truly the nurses, I've worked very, very closely with the nurses in the past 3 weeks. The nurses, our school physician, the pediatric association will say, if you are questioning with a cold symptom, keep your child at home. There will be an understanding that at this time during the pandemic, that absence is due to colds and flu-like symptoms and COVID-like symptoms are going to be greater than in the traditional sense. One of the good benefit of having remote going on at the same time is that if the child, as Christy just referenced, the child's not super sick, just has symptoms, but could possibly log into remote, then they can continue on. So there is, that being available to children. But as we've written in some of our letters, if a child is in hybrid and for a reason that has to do with something that's going on at home, that there might be COVID cases or fear or worry about based on family situation, that child could go into a remote situation. So we are trying to accommodate as much as possible with still maintaining a school system. Question number 10 is a comment. Sarah, do you want to read it?
Yes, comment. As a parent, I'm sorry, this is from the same parent still. As a parent of a 7-year-old in your school district, I am sure I speak for many other parents when I say that you are doing these children a huge disservice with this plan that you came up with. It lacks forward thinking and the ability to adjust to an ever-changing environment, and I wonder how helpless you would feel as a parent if you were presented with these choices for your children's future.
We as an administration, many of my administrators are parents of young children who realize firsthand, but we wish we could solve this situation, but I appreciate your concerns and your thoughts. I really do. Question number 11.
This is from Jason Lano at 107 Liberty Court. Hello, thank you for your time and support. Please explain what updates have been made to the reopening plan for November 19th start versus the September 8th start of hybrid model. For example, sanitation, custodial staffing, COVID-19 safety protocols, and standards for well-being of staff and students.
So we have updated the restart and recovery plan, not the one from the state, obviously, that there are guidelines, but our own one that's posted on our website. And I've just spent a good amount of time with the nurses and updating that, and with our facilities manager, that I promise you, Mr. Leno, is it, that I will make sure that we post it by this weekend.
Amy Powell, Eagle Farms. A lot of parents rented instruments for this school year. When will they be starting their lessons?
So I can answer that, I think, and Christy, add in if you have any other information. But because we approved the band and the choir clubs today, and I know that Mrs. Ottinger is going to be starting her band during the day, during the regular school hours. So it should be starting shortly, now that the board has approved those clubs and those lessons. Okay, next question.
This is from Denise Kane at 220 Abbey Lane. Not sure why her precursor comment was not shared. IEP goals and services are not being fully administered as written. I've addressed this with Mrs. Flynn with limited resolution. Pre-K special education students are precluded from rejoining in-person instruction until February 3rd if we were not able to have them rejoin on October 19th.
Hi, Mrs. Kane. I did want to address some of those things. I just didn't get a chance to. Your 4.5-year-old can come back to in-person instruction. We're not going to hold the February 3rd date. I know that this is something that you had mentioned in your comment earlier about your schedule. And so I can work with you to try to maybe work on related services. That was an area that we discussed. I don't know how to increase the amount of time just yet, but that's something that I can explore in terms of the school day. And then, yeah, but most importantly, yes, your 4.5-year-old can return to the PSD classroom before February 3rd.
And I will, thank you, Laura, and I will address the fact that that just, Mrs. Kane, for no other reason other than the length of that comment that you made in before, that was why I'm trying to keep this, this meeting to a pace that we can all stay attentive to and address as many people as we can. So that was the intent. And I apologize if you felt that there was any other intent. Question number 14, Sarah.
Amy Pinter at Shady Brook Lane. I've been trying to get an answer since the summer to this question. Will the district be transparent as to active COVID cases in the school? I understand HIPAA laws. I am not asking for who was tested positive, but I feel the community needs to know firsthand, not via rumors, if any person in the school buildings has been infected. I see many other schools keeping the public updated. I would feel more confident sending my children knowing what is actually happening with cases. Thank you.
Mrs. Pintrick, I am following the Department of Health guidelines. If the and I believe this past week, actually I know this for sure because I was the one who sent it out. We worked very closely with the nurses to be able to talk about when you would be, what is a close contact, what's a casual contact, when someone has to be isolated, when someone has to be quarantined. And I believe in the body of that letter, there was a statement that if the Department of Health believes that we should be notifying parents because of safety reasons, that would be shared. I really have to follow the Department of Health's guidelines. This is not my area of expertise. Medicine is not. And I will be following what they dictate if a COVID situation occurs in our district. Okay. Yeah.
I don't know if you saw today, the CDC changed its guidelines. Now the guideline is if you're within 15 minutes of a person within a 24-hour period, is considered close contact.
So I'm sure that we will be getting those updates. And I would probably determine that it's probably because of the increase in the COVID cases across the nation that the CDC is trying. Before it was up 10 to 15 minutes within 6 feet. Now it's within 24 hours, the contact tracing. So it might be as a result of trying to keep on top of the COVID cases. Thank you, Frank, for that input, and I'll look for that. Question number 15.
This is the final question from Erin Pobry. Do not share her home address. Mrs. Haney continues to state that the reason Logan is unable to plan for longer in-person hybrid days or an increase in in-person days is due to statewide regulations. However, the state has given each district the ability to interpret and implement the state regulations for each district. Many districts in our state and immediate area are providing more in-person instruction. Please clarify exactly what prevents Logan from doing the same.
We are not the same as any other district. When I was referencing that I will follow the state guidelines, it was to make sure that we are maintaining the social distancing and the mask wearing. And part of that social distancing is still that we are at a capacity limit in rooms as well as in the building. So those are the guidelines that I will continue to follow. Some other districts are making decisions based on their own situation in their schools. And every district has the ability, the state has given us guidelines, but also saying that it is a local decision but we have to still follow the state guidelines. So that's probably all I can say on that question or comment.
That was the final comment.
Hey, Frank, I hand it over to you.
All right, thank you. On the financial reports, the Finance Committee met last night virtually, and we went over the financial reports in the bill list, and we're recommending to the board that they adopt the reports and the bill list as listed. And I guess we can move on to a vote on the minutes as listed, the financial reports, the bill list, and the agenda items and the added agenda items.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Oh, lots of seconds. Roll call, please.
Mr. Donnelly,
Yes.
Mrs. Kegler,
Yes.
Dr. Bowen,
Yes.
Mrs. Hill,
Yes.
Mrs. Lombardo,
Yes.
Mrs. Mason,
Yes.
Mrs. Reed,
Yes.
Mrs. Roan,
Yes.
Mr. Russell.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Now we go into the reports. Gloucester County, I have nothing to report on Gloucester County. I think there was a meeting or virtual meeting, but I didn't attend, so I'm not sure what was actually.
Okay.
Caroline, New Jersey School Boards?
Well, no, I have nothing either. We did have a meeting to get our nominating committee together, but that was all last Saturday.
Okay. Kristen, anything on home and school?
I do. Home and School held their elections on Monday night, and my former maiden name is Gargiulo, so I know how this feels. I will try not to butcher anybody's names, but Katie Pagnotta and Kimmy Taylor are the co-presidents for 2 years. Colleen Ketterer is the vice president. Sarah Loven is the secretary. Jennifer Bignier is the treasurer. Jackie Cuevas is the assistant treasurer, and Christine Cannon is the alternate. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kingsway, we had our meeting earlier this week, last night, as a matter of fact. So let's see, Kingsway in the middle school has 1,023 students, and of those, 74% are doing the hybrid learning, and 26% are doing virtual learning at the middle school. At the high school, they have 1,800 students. 73% doing hybrid, and 27% doing the virtual learning. Kingsway is also going to be a polling place one for the election on November 3rd. And that's because they're closed all week. Let's see, Kingsway is refunding its 2012 bond referendum for $16,850,000 because interest rates are so low. And they're planning their senior trip for May. They're aiming for 60% participation, but they're way below that number. And they're recommending that parents buy the insurance for $88 just in case they have to have their money refunded. And finally, there was a discussion, very interesting discussion on awards and recognitions. Kingsway recognizes students of the month and seniors of the month, and it was brought up that they don't recognize students who have special needs. They're basically ignored in those kind of award ceremonies. So Kingsway's looking at trying to come up with a challenge award for any students who do have special needs, and coming up with criteria to be able to give them something to recognize their abilities and the struggles that they go through. So I might have some more on that next month. Let's see, anything else?
If we are going down to new business, since you were just mentioning about the percentage of, at the middle school and the high school over at Kingsway, I thought I'd share also the numbers, the percentages that we have for first grade and second grade, because the survey was sent out. We kept it open longer because parents were responding. We still don't have a full 100%, so we're going to be sending out a second school messenger as specifically to those parents who have not responded. But first grade, for the number of students that are due back in November, we have 84% going hybrid and 16% remote. And in second grade, 79% hybrid and 21% remote. So it sounds similar to our PK&K program as well as our Kingsway program. Sounds like they're all hovering around 75 to 85% hybrid, 25% to 15% remote. Would you agree, Frank?
Yeah, I guess it seems that way. Kingsway is reporting that they haven't had any COVID cases over there. I mean, their biggest concern is what might happen between, say, the first week in November and with school being closed for an entire week and then the holidays coming up. There's some real concern over there that they might see a spike in that number. But
yeah, and I
know
that Jim Lavender and all of us, the fellow superintendents, were talking yesterday at the superintendent's conference call that we are also concerned about families traveling during that week. We are not closed. We are working, students are in session, remote learning, November 1, 2, and 3, as you know, because November 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, because you just approved that tonight. But schools are closed for the NJEA convention, and we're worried about, I apologize for that noise. We're worried about people going to states that have travel advisories and travel restrictions and then coming back. And that is a worry among all the superintendents, that not only, students might have a higher COVID case, but staff members. So there is a concern of what's going to happen in the month of November.
Yeah, that's a big concern over at Kingsway too, because that's because they're up the entire first week of November, and that's usually people wind up going to Disneyland or Disney World. So that's a real concern.
Yeah.
Okay, any old business?
Nope.
All right, we need to go into an executive session, and that is related to a student issue that comes up, and action may or may not be taken.
And I sent to all of the board members a link, and if you go into Google Meet, it would say the 7:30 meeting, but it still would be active. Am I right, Rob? Doesn't matter the time. But everybody can click on that link and get into the Google Meet for executive session. And that is not open to the public, right, Frank?
No, not open to the public, correct. All right, so we need a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Who was that?
Kim and John.
Okay, so John, you can be the second.
Second.
Okay, then all those in favor? Aye.
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 All right, so
Aye.
we can leave here and go back to
Google Meet.
Google Meet.
Got it. Thank you.